Hello everyone, it is I, the indomitable black man, once again bringing you a video on parenting to help give you, the parents, all the tools necessary in order to raise very helpful, healthy, holistic children and take over the world and stuff. Yeah. Continuing with the first video, we are talking about the different styles of parenting. There are 4 styles. If you remember, there is authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and neglectful. If you haven't seen that video, I recommend you go watch that. I'm gonna put it somewhere, maybe like a little button or something. I don't know, we'll figure it out. But anyway, let's get started. Today, we're gonna talk about permissive parenting. Now, permissive parenting is what a lot of people think I subscribe to. It is a parenting style in which children kind of have free reign and do whatever they want. And we're going to talk about why that's a problem. Permissive parenting, also known as indulgent parenting, is basically when a parent they have a high responsive rate to their child. They're very warm, they're very nurturing, they're very comforting, but there's a low demand on what the child should be doing. There aren't a lot of responsibilities that the child has. There is not a lot of discipline or consequences or boundaries for the child. This can manifest as parents giving their kids bribes all the time for the kid to complete small tasks. They tend to treat their children like friends as opposed to figureheads or leaders of these children to help shepherd them. There is an emphasis of freedom over responsibility, and that can have some issues and conflicts of interest. Some things that happen when you have a permissive parent is you can have poor academic performance because there is no standard to reach. The kid is not necessarily having to perform. There is going to be a degrading of that child's academic performance. And so that can mean that there could be a lot of cognitive development issues that are existing. That could be, maybe there are cognitive impairments, special needs that the child has that can't be accurately assessed because there's no standard on the child to do any better. Children like this, because they're not being taught how to interact, there's no boundary setting, this child can become more impulsive or more aggressive because there's nothing that's holding that child in the state of mind that you have to operate in the confines of society. Children from permissive households are prone to delinquency. They're prone to substance abuse. They're prone to alcohol abuse. And these are real issues because they're going to affect them long term, not just in the short term, but this can affect them later in their life, like in their mid ages. And here's a really interesting part. A lot of kids who come from permissive households tend to have obesity. And that's usually because there is no boundary even of food. There is just, okay, well, I'll appease you with this food. Oh, I will bribe you with food. It's a very primitive way to get a person to do something. Think of like you're the most primitive part of your mind. You'll work for food. You'll help your friend move for food. It's a very quick intrinsic reward for something. And so parents can go overboard in doing that. And we will talk later, and probably some fewer videos down the road, what a proper reward system should look like. And now what's really interesting is that this is the exact opposite, but not the exact opposite of authoritarian parenting. It's so similar, so similar. And I'm going to talk about that in the authoritarian video. But for right now, I would just say that there are things that people do in the permissive parenting that are very similar to authoritative parenting. So now, how do we change from being permissive parents into parents that are authoritative? Now, I am a firm believer that authoritative parenting is the best style of parenting, not to be confused with authoritarian, but the authoritative has high responsiveness and high demand. How can we go from being a person with high responsiveness, low demand to high responsiveness, high demand? First things first is to establish boundaries and consequences. In the real world, our goal as parents and as caregivers and child care workers is to prepare children for the real world. And a part of that is letting them recognize that you have consequences for your actions, be them good consequences or bad consequences. We have those. We also have boundaries, and it is up to us to teach those boundaries to all of our kids so that they can know how to navigate through them. So the first thing we want to do is establish good, healthy boundaries. Second thing you want to do is establish consequences. Consequences are desperately needed because it teaches a kid what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, and the outcome of both of their actions. This helps with decision making so they know what they can do and what they can't do. Following through and enforcing both your boundaries and your consequences are imperative. If you do not do that, your child will be all over. I liken it to bowling. If you have a guard on one side and a gutter on the other, and you toss a ball down and it bounces off one boundary, it'll fall right into that gutter if there isn't another boundary there. There has to be boundaries in place. So if it's kind of off, if it's trying to meander its way down the lane, it can find out how to get to the end of the lane safely. If you were just tossing balls out without a guardrail on either side, it's going to go into the gutter. So we have to be looking at life similar to that. Where are we putting up boundaries? Is this a healthy boundary to establish for my child? And what can they learn from it? And now an important thing I want all of us to realize, especially when you're changing from permissive parenting to authoritative parenting, do not overcompensate because it can very easily go into authoritarian parenting. You don't have to overcompensate. All you're doing is just adding a demand, adding boundaries, and enforcing those boundaries. It doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be aggressive. And it takes time. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Gradually get to that place. Don't just overnight, I'm going to hit you with all these reinforcers. No, that's not going to help anybody. Gradually increase it. And then they'll get to a place where they're acclimated to these boundaries, to these social expectations that they need. And they'll be all the better for it. That's all for this episode of the parenting series on the 4 styles of parenting. Once again, I'm the Indomitable Black Man. Please like, share, subscribe, all of that. Comment below what style of parenting you think you have and ways that you feel like you can come out of that and into authoritative parenting. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them down below. You can also find me on my TikTok at the Indomitable Black Man, or you can find me on Instagram at the Giant Gabe _ in between each word.